I have a question here that was submitted via Reddit about working online. And the question is, hi, what skills do you recommend working on to get more online jobs? So I think there's a few parts to this. Um, one is the actual skills that um, you do for the jobs, right? Like the technical skills, the so-called hard skills. And I think broadly speaking, um, for online work, especially online work that's better paid, more consistent, and just higher value in general. Uh, Broadly speaking, the skills I would recommend would be either technology um, or online marketing of some kind. Um, More specifically, I think within technology, uh, the most popular kind of in-demand skills right now, where there's um, more supply um, of jobs and gigs and like work opportunities than there are people to fill them, would be anything related to any kind of automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science, anything in that kind of general field. And that's fairly complex, kind of like heavy technical subjects. But if I was, uh, going back and going to university and choosing a subject based on, what would give me the best job prospects today, those are definitely the fields that I would look at. And I think most of those translate well to online work simply because they're in demand, which sort of gives you more leverage when it comes to choosing between different employers and gigs and jobs, um, and they're technology related, right? So they're logistically like nursing is in demand right now too, but obviously doesn't translate as well to online work. So within marketing, um, I think social media marketing broadly, especially anything related with video and different sort of like optimizations for various social media channels. There's hardly a business out there these days that isn't active on social media, looking to improve their social media presence, looking to improve the results that they're seeing, um, with social media campaigns and engagement. Um, and again, like within that specifically video. So those are the kind of two high level areas that I would look at for skills that you can learn or optimize for to find work, especially work online. So that's the first part of the answer. The hard skills, the technologies that are in demand right now and that are popular, and that if you're looking for a job, I think are the ones where there's the most hiring activity. The other way to interpret this question, though, would be like, what are the skills that you need, regardless of like what type of work you'll be doing? What are the skills that you need to actually get online work? And I think in any job, in the case of any job, whether it's online or not, um, the skill you need to actually get the job is the ability to market or sell yourself um, to the person who's hiring or the company that's hiring. And that's something that for some people comes easy. For other people, I think especially, or in many cases, people in technology and engineering, or people who are just more introverted in general, um, that can be more of a struggle. It feels awkward um, to talk about yourself, um, it feels like you're sort of like bragging or being cocky when trying to like sell your services. So uh, marketplaces like um, Upwork and others, feel more sort of like a a commodity transaction, less like you need to sell yourself than say like a traditional job interview, and more kind of like, here's the project, here's the rate. But there's still, even on all of those platforms, you still need to put your best face, um, out into the world. And so I think that's, the ability to do that is an important skill when it comes to actually landing the jobs, regardless of what type of work you'll be doing. So knowing, I mean, it's a form of marketing. It's just marketing yourself rather than, what we were talking about earlier, doing marketing work on behalf of another company. Um, there are, of course, some common ways to do that, right? So having a great LinkedIn profile, and I think there are people out there that specialize in helping you with that, in optimizing your LinkedIn profile, reviewing it. Um, but at least having one, I think, is important. You should just assume, these days that any job you're applying for, online or off, the first thing that a prospective, employer or client is going to do is like Google your name and see what's out there. And you might as well be on top of that yourself, right? You might as well take some control over what's out there and, you know, at least make an effort to show up well online. So again, that's your LinkedIn profile. Um, if you're doing any sort of creative work like design, having a portfolio that's easily found online and that represents your best work. Uh, so it's up to date, and you don't necessarily have to put everything you've ever done there, but it should certainly include what you would want a prospective employer or client to see. Even if you're not doing, like, it's obvious that a wedding photographer should have a portfolio showing examples of their best photos. But even if you do something like, say, software development, I think a portfolio is still appropriate. It could be like a traditional portfolio. It can also be increasingly common these days, something like a link to your GitHub account, where you show that you've contributed to various open source software projects, for example. And I think the nice thing about something like that is that even when you're first starting out, if you don't have a lot of formal work experience, you can still use something like a GitHub um, uh, as like a portfolio in lieu of 5 years of experience working at some company in a similar role. But again, more generally, that skill of being able to market yourself online, to show up well to people who are looking to hire you, I think is important. Another skill that I think is important, especially if you want to move up when you go beyond those sort of first, commodity-like projects where someone is just saying, I need a whatever WordPress web developer for 10 hours. What's your hourly rate? As you move out of that world of projects, or those types of projects, the other skill that becomes important is the ability to translate what you do into tangible business benefits, assuming your clients are businesses, which I think in most cases they're going to be. And so what I mean by that is, instead of saying, yeah, I'll develop this website for you and it's, $50 an hour and it's going to take me 10 hours, right? That's the commodity approach. I think that's perfectly fine starting out. I think that's how most of the marketplaces and sort of like gigs that are on offer structure this type of work and sort of force you to structure this type of work. But as you move up, if you're able to, instead of saying, $50 an hour at $10 an hour or whatever, if you're able to say something more like, I'm going to, what was the example? Website development. Okay, so I'm going to improve your online store's conversion rate by 10%, which if your store does $1 million a year, now it's going to do an extra $100,000 a year. And for the privilege of being able to sell an extra $100,000 a year, you're going to pay me $50,000 to make that change for you. I mean, just a random example, but the point is being able to sell what you're doing, the work that you're doing, not based on time and materials that it takes you to do the work, but rather based on the benefit to the person who's paying you to do it or the company who's paying you to do it. Again, if you're just starting out, I don't think that's necessarily required to get an initial job. If someone asks you to make a logo for them and you're a graphic designer and you say, okay, I charge $100 for a logo, or I charge $100 an hour for a logo, or whatever, I think that's totally fine. But I do think it's helpful to always have in mind what those business benefits are, and to start incorporating that type of thinking into whatever it is that you're doing.